Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me on another live stream event. My name is Melissa Favela, and I'm the community educator for Southern Caregiver Resource Center. Now, I'm very excited to bring you this live stream today, this presentation. It is almost a back to basics. And so if you want to get comfortable, if you want to grab a notepad, a pen to take notes, and if you are just watching right now or listening, this live stream will be available on YouTube or on demand right after this live ends. So let's get started with today's presentation. Today we will be talking about navigating daily care, activities of daily living explained. So let's get on to our learning objectives. Next slide, please. So these are our learning objectives for today. We will identify activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living, also known as ADLs and IADLs. We will also explore the very important role caregivers play with these activities of daily living and the additional resources around ADLs and IADLs. So if you're familiar with these, that's awesome. Maybe this is just a little reminder. And if this terminology, if this is new for you, if you just want to learn a little bit more, then I'm hoping and I'm sure you will have something that will stay with you from this presentation. So as always, next slide, please. Let's start off with some statistics. It's always important to understand why we are talking about the topic, right? Why are we discussing it? Why am I watching this live stream? Why is it relevant? So statistics are a great way to show you some numbers as to why this topic is important. So if you see the points here, they are from a report done by AARP. It's called a Report to the Nation on Independent Living and Disability. And so you'll see that it tells us a few key things regarding activities of daily living. So it says, the first point says, the lifetime probability of becoming disabled in at least two activities of daily living is 68% for people age 65 and older. And now this is relevant because we know now that the population who is 65 and older is set to double by 2030. So a few more years, and that means that more people will need some help with their activities of daily living. Now, the second point says that approximately 5.8 to 7 million family caregivers provide ADL care, so activities of daily living care, to an adult who's 65 and older. So if we are seeing that there's a projection of the population 65 and up doubling by 2030, and we already have millions of family caregivers aiding those care receivers, then we can safely assume that the need for family caregivers is also gonna double as the years go by, right? So we can definitely see that projection going up as well. Now, the third point says that people age 65 and older with limitations in 3 or more activities of daily living receive an average of 9 hours of assistance per day. So maybe this point isn't necessarily as clear right now, especially if you're new to the term of activities of daily living. We will explain that, we will expand on that. And once you see that 3 or more activities of daily living equals approximately 9 hours of assistance per day, that's a lot, right? That's maybe a big monetary investment. That's a lot of time that the family caregiver needs to really invest in their care receivers. So we'll expand on that if this point isn't necessarily as clear. No worries. And the very last point states that people age 65 and older have limitations in 3 or more activities of daily living, and they receive approximately 11 hours of assistance per day. And, compared to the last point, we do see that there's an increase of hours per day. And of course, we do see that there's a difference in age, right? We see that there's a 20-year difference in age. So yes, we can assume that the older we become, maybe we need more assistance with ADLs, right? Now, this is not necessarily something that should happen, but we do see that it happens. Okay, and so again, if these statistics aren't necessarily clear, especially those last two, don't worry because we will discuss them a little bit more. Next slide, please. So the question, right? This is the main question if you're not familiar with the terminology. What are activities of daily living? Well, activities of daily living are basic routine tasks or skills that most healthy individuals can perform without assistance, meaning that these individuals can live and care for themselves independently. Maybe you're thinking of yourself, right? Or maybe you're thinking of someone you know where they can do anything and everything independently. Now, this term was first coined by Sidney Katz in 1950. So we've had this term for a few years, and it's we have maintained the name, the term, but you'll see how we assess has changed just a little bit, and we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. Now, these activities that are included in this term, these ADLs, refer to tasks such as eating, dressing, bathing, toileting, managing continence, and transferring. And so let me expand a little bit on each because they sound pretty straightforward, right? For example, when we're thinking about eating, right? That's the ability that an individual has to feed oneself. And expanding on that a little bit more, let's think about what else we need when we're going to feed ourselves, right? Well, we need to think if the food that we're consuming is nutritious or if something we should consume, right? And this is depending on the situation and each individual, right? But just kind of what goes on behind the ability to feed oneself. Or for example, dressing. Dressing is the ability to select appropriate clothes and to put them on. So it's not just necessarily putting on clothes, it's the ability to select appropriate clothes. Then the third one is bathing or personal hygiene, right? This is the ability to bathe and groom oneself and maintain dental hygiene, nail hygiene, and hair care. It also includes all of the actions you might need to do when bathing, like getting in and out of a tub or a shower, adjusting the shower head, or changing water temperature. Now, it can also include standby assistance when the person is considered a fall risk. So as you see, we may see that the terms seem pretty straightforward, but really once we start thinking about it, it involves a lot more. Now let's go on to toileting. This is the ability to get to and from the toilet, use it appropriately, and clean oneself afterward. Any assistance needed with incontinence, that means that we can't control our urination or defecation abilities, that is also considered help with toileting. So that would mean that the person needs help with toileting ADLs. Continence, mentioned the ability to control one bladder, bowel function, and then transferring. So I really like transferring because people think, well, that's just moving from one space to the next, right? Sure. But it also includes their ability to walk independently, right? It typically refers to getting in and out of bed, moving from a chair to the sofa, sitting up, sitting down, right? I'm sorry, standing up, sitting down, going in and out of a vehicle, right? So again, as we think more about it, we see that it's not necessarily as straightforward. And so again, just to reiterate for those of you that might just be learning about ADLs or maybe are needing a refresher, the activities of daily living are six. So eating, dressing, bathing, toileting, continence, and transferring. Next slide, please. Now we're going to move on to instrumental activities of daily living. And so these are IADLs or instrumental ADLs. You might hear different terms used for these, but again, just to spell the term out, they're instrumental activities of daily living. Now, these require more complex thinking skills. These even include organizational skills. So as we now know, Katz was the first person to use and coin the term ADLs, and that was in 1950. But it wasn't really until 1970, so 20 years later, that Lawton Brody and MP Lawton developed the instrumental activities of daily living. So they kind of expanded on the ADLs. Now, the instrumental activities of daily living, as you see here in the slide, require more complex thinking, organizational skills. So let's go through them. So let's think about transportation. Transportation means the ability to plan for and manage transportation, either by driving or by organizing other means of transport. So here, this is not necessarily just transferring, right, from one place to another or from one location to another. This is the planning that goes behind how am I going to get there? Or if I don't drive, am I going to schedule the transportation? Which number do I need to call? How early do I need to call to get to the place where I'm going, etc. So definitely a lot more thinking skills, right? The second one we see here is managing finances. So this is the ability to pay bills and manage financial assets. Some of you may be pros at managing your finances. Other people have a little bit more of a challenging time, right? And so when we see that people are having issues with these, then maybe we can figure out that their complex thinking organizational skills aren't really working for them at the moment, right? But again, same thing. Think about all of the things you need to do to pay your bills, right? Or manage financial assets. Let's even think just about the utility bills. In this day and age, a lot of it is online. You have to sign up online, right? You get maybe a letter saying how to do it online, but so setting those things up, making sure that we're paying it on time, maybe if we have our bank account linked to the utility bills, etc. So these, again, critical thinking skills management. Now, moving on to the third one, that's shopping. That's the ability to organize and be aware of needed items and procure them, such as maintaining adequate groceries in the home. And that's just to make sure that we have enough groceries so that we can actually cook our meals, or sufficient shopping, right? If we have a grocery list, right, then we need to make sure that we have everything so that we can have our meals for the week or however long we plan for. Or even if we're talking maybe not about groceries, but clothing, right? Or cleaning products, other things that we need to shop for. So again, those organizational skills. Then we also have meal preparation. And this is the ability to manage everything required to prepare a meal. And this includes safety, right? When we are using a knife and a cutting board, if we're cooking with a fire, right? The stovetop, how are we keeping ourselves safe? Are we storing food safely? All of those things go into the meal preparation. Then we have house cleaning and maintenance. And this is the ability to clean dishes after eating, maintaining living areas in reasonably clean and tidy state, and keeping up with home maintenance. So again, keeping track of all of the things that go with the home maintenance or home cleaning. Managing communication with others. So that's a big one, right? Because this is managing not just how we communicate with one another, but also how do we communicate? Is it going to be a phone call? Are we going to meet in person and talk? Is it going to be through email, etc.? So again, not just what we communicate, but how we communicate. And then we also have managing medications, and that's the ability to obtain medications and take them correctly as directed. So making sure that we're able to follow the doctor's orders, the how to take the medication, when to take the medication, if we're running low on the medication, that we are calling the pharmacy ahead of time, or that we know how many refills we have left, right? All of these little things that for some of us, where we don't need support with the instrumental activities of daily living, where we're able to do them ourselves, it's kind of a natural process, right? Because our complex thinking and our organizational skills don't need support. They're happening, right? We're able to do it ourselves. However, when it comes to people who do need help with these, then the caregiver has to step in, right? And we'll expand on that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So why do ADLs matter? Well, they matter because they to perform these activities is a critical measure of how an individual is able to function. Are they functional? And these ADLs play a vital role in determining if they're independent, right? And really their overall quality of life, because if an individual isn't able to do their ADLs fully, then most likely their quality of life is going lower and lower, especially if they're not receiving assistance, right? Now, when individuals are unable to perform the and sometimes, depending on the oversight, these can increase the risk for adverse health outcomes. And, especially if there is no outside support, it can lead to unsafe living conditions, right? Again, if there is no one there to be a family caregiver and that individual needs support, with ADLs, basic things, right? Activities of daily life. If they don't have support, it can definitely lead to unsafe living conditions. Now, these limitations that individuals may experience may also necessitate significant lifestyle changes, right? So this might mean that people may need to be hospitalized, right? Kind of worst case scenario. They may need to have paid home care, or again, have a family caregiver be more present in their lives. Some people even have to have admission into nursing homes or other alternative living arrangements. Now, assessing this individual's ability to perform their ADLs is really crucial for the caregivers. This is to figure out what daily care are they going to need, what type of support are they going to need. This assessment of ADLs is also really important for the healthcare team, right? To make sure that the doctor knows what is going on, what the patient needs, if they need a bigger care team, right? Like occupational therapy, etc. And this is not just for those who are in temporary rehabilitation, but this is really for those individuals who are also trying to maintain maybe their independence in their own home. They may need to have this assessed so that they can figure out maybe what modifications or what type of support they need. Now, something to note about ADLs and really the need to assess ADLs is that this assessment can inform eligibility for state and federal assistance programs, particularly for older adults and individuals with disabilities, by helping determine the level of support required for daily functioning. So some people may have that requirement to access some of the benefits that they're looking to access. Okay, so just something to note. Next slide, please. Now, there are many benefits for caregivers to have their care receivers' ADLs assessed. Okay, we kind of mentioned them a little bit in the last slide, But really, caregivers can utilize the CATS Index of Independence, activities of daily living, and we'll look into that, what that looks like in the upcoming slides. So the caregiver can look through it, right? They can do a very informal assessment. However, a professional assessment by a primary care physician, a geriatric care manager, or an occupational therapist can help both the daily caregiving tasks, so the task the family caregivers does, and the really the healthcare team, right? Their understanding of the support that the patient needs, and also what their role in patient care has to be, right? Because it might change over time. Now, this can help the care team assess the functional status, identifying barriers to independence, and developing care plans that promote patient safety, autonomy, and quality of life. All of these are addressed. So the ADLs can also be assessed periodically, right? And this is to notice any changes. If you recall the statistics that we talked about right at the start of the presentation, we had some statistics relating to people needing support with ADLs when they were around 65, and then needing more support with their ADLs when they were 85 or older, right? And so how do we know that they need more support with their ADLs? Well, because because their ADLs were possibly assessed periodically. That is how we end up knowing that those individuals need more help. Now, something else to note, and I mentioned it a little bit in our last slide, is that the need to assess ADLs to access certain benefits. These can include Medicare, Medi-Cal, or other aging related services such as long-term care insurance. So don't be surprised if this is a requirement, if really doing the CATS index is a requirement to access those benefits. Next slide, please. So now we are seeing here the CATS index of independence and activities of daily living. You can find this online, really, but let's go through it. What is this index telling me? So the index ranks adequacy of performance in the 6 functions of bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, continence, and feeding, as you see here listed on the column on the left side. And clients are scored yes or no for independence in each of the 6 functions. Now, a total score of 6 indicates full function. A total score of 4 indicates moderate impairment, and a total score of 2 or less indicates severe functional impairment. All right. Now, as you can see here, the middle column is independence, right? So for each activity, if they are independent, then we will add a point. Now, on the most right column here, we see dependence. That is when that individual is able to, for example, dress with the supervision or the direction or total assistance of someone else. So if they are dependent, then we add 0 points. Okay, and so again, pretty straightforward. And again, some caregivers may do this because they want to, kind of get an idea of what's going on. But again, this can also be done in a more formal setting. Now, next slide, please. Now, we are seeing a different scale, right? And so now this scale is for the instrumental activities of daily living. So this is the Lawton-Brody scale, okay? Now, this is commonly used with older adults to help determine the level of assistance they may need, or guide their care plan, or monitor changes in functional status over time. So how does it work? Basically, there are 8 domains, as you see here, and they measure the function with the scale that you see here as well. So where people are scored on all 8 areas of function. So as you see here, for example, it says ability to use the telephone, operates telephone on own initiative, looks up and dials numbers, etc. So they get a score of 1. Dials a few well-known numbers, answers telephone but does not dial, or does not use the telephone at all. So basically you would go through each of these, circle the one that is appropriate, and then add it all up at the end. Okay, now something interesting here, just a little bit of history when it comes to this scale. Historically, for men, the areas of food preparation, housekeeping, laundering were excluded when they were doing this IADL scale, but that is no longer the case, as it was a type of gender bias. So this current practice also ensures that no potential areas of difficulty are overlooked regardless of gender, leading to more accurate and clinically relevant assessment. So this is very important because we are removing that bias, and we're really doing what is a full assessment for each individual, regardless of their gender. Next slide, please. The care receivers team, right? Let's talk about that caregiving team, which is not just the family caregiver, not in all cases, ideally not in all cases. The care receivers care team can include any of the following, and they may need ADL assessment for different things, right? So let's explore them a little bit more, just to give you some examples. If this is something that you are dealing with currently and you're wondering, well, why is my loved one having several ADL assessments, or why do they even need to do one? Then this hopefully will give you a little bit more insight. So for example, we see a list, right? We see a list of all the different professionals that can be involved in the care team. But let's say we're talking about nurses and care managers. They can use this assessment and collect information on a person's ability to perform ADLs. This information will enable them to plan for each individual's continuum of care, right? So because they're going through really kind of the longer term care, what is their care going to look like, not just today at their appointment, but in their future appointments, right? Or clinicians use these assessments to formulate and develop a care plan, which is then provided to the home health agency or skilled nursing agency, right? Because they're basing their information on what they're observing, on facts. Now, these agencies then select the appropriate staff needed for each client, right? So if we're having an ADL assessment and that's getting passed down to the health agency or a skilled nursing facility, then they assess and they say, okay, well, we have this staff that is prepared to aid this individual for these tasks that they need, right? Then we also have physical and occupational therapists, and they can work according to the care plan document and patient's progress in ADLs to ensure that rehabilitation goals are achieved to the greatest possible extent. And now also, insurance providers and government agencies use ADL assessments to determine the patient's qualifications and pay for the services rendered. So very relevant. Such a small questionnaire, if you will, has many uses and many benefits. So hopefully this is allowing you to understand a little bit more about the relevancy of really understanding and managing, observing ADLs, and the really the big impact they have in the care receiver's health. Next slide, please. So hopefully by now we understand why ADLs, IADLs matter, how they're assessed, etc., right? However, this leads us to the question of what causes a decline in ADLs and IADLs, right? We know about them, we're aware, but what causes a decline? Well, a decline in physical function can result really from a variety of factors. There's no single thing. Of course, aging is a natural contributor and often leads to a gradual loss of independence, and independence in ADLs, right? We're focusing on those. And these conditions affect the musculoskeletal, neurological, circulatory or sensory systems, and this can further impact physical abilities. Now, cognitive or mental decline, especially in patients with dementia, is strongly linked to reduced engagement in ADLs, which in turn impacts overall quality of life. Impairments in IADLs, or instrumental activities of daily living, like managing finances or transportation, can also lead to social isolation, worsening mood, cognition, and general health. Now, other contributing factors include side effects from medications, challenges in the home environment, acute injuries. The extent of functional loss often depends on the severity of the event and the patient's baseline health. Now, hospitalizations and acute illnesses are also key risk factors. Research shows that many older adults are discharged from the hospital with worse functional status than when they were admitted. Okay, and so again, not a single cause really, but something of importance as well. As we can see, it could be physical decline, it could be cognitive decline, it could be something else. Next slide, please. Now that we know what are some of the things that might cause a decline in ADLs and IADLs, we'll now talk about how family caregivers can recognize their decline in their care receivers. Now, here are some warning signs that can help family caregivers be aware that there may be a decline. However, changes in an individual's ability to perform ADLs can really serve as an early indicator, right? Because not everybody is starting from the same baseline. So it is important to understand the starting point and then assessing or recognizing if there are other things going on. So really the caregivers are the ones who really are paying attention. We rarely hear a care receiver say, hey, I'm having more issues bathing, right? I'm having more issues transferring. It's usually the caregiver who starts recognizing these changes, right? So the caregivers who pay attention to these changes really can proactively address emerging needs and seek appropriate medical attention if necessary, right? So this is really where we encourage family caregivers to not only notice these changes or say, you know what, mom is really, slower. Now I'm helping her with the bathing. She's not doing it herself. It's recognizing and saying, okay, well, what can we do? Right? Is she able to maintain her independence with a few changes here and there, grab bars, anti-slip mats, etc. Right? And so we do need to be proactive about it. Now, these are just some points that we can use to recognize the decline. So changes in regular hygiene, right? I was giving you that example of someone not being able to maintain their regular hygiene, their daily hygiene. And so this is really a big one, right? We start seeing maybe someone who was always clean shaven, and we start seeing that they have stubble, right? That's not necessarily normal. What's going on? We can also see, we know our family care receivers, right? And so we can figure out what their baseline is, and if they're not at baseline, what is going on? Is there decline happening? We can also recognize decline if, for example, they're spoiled or uneaten food. If it was someone who had a really healthy appetite, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they ate bananas and left the oranges, but now they leave both oranges and bananas, right? What is going on? What are the changes? Something else that we can notice is missed medications or appointments. And this is something that a lot of the times caregivers don't notice until they're asked about it, right? Maybe they say, oh, they missed a medication, and I try to remind them, that's it. But then maybe once they're in the doctor's office with their care receiver and there's things going on medically, and the doctors can prompt, hey, has your mom taking her medication regularly because, her tests are showing me X, Y, and Z. And so these are some things that we can recognize, right? Or if they're missing appointments, right? If we know that they have an appointment, they were planning on going, and then all of a sudden they start missing appointments. Unpaid bills is a big one. Unfortunately, this is also a harder one to recognize or to identify unless we're very present. The baseline is being present beforehand, but really a lot of caregivers don't recognize that the bills aren't getting paid unless they see a letter, right? They start getting letters of bills not being paid. So it's a little harder, but once we're there, we can recognize, hey, why aren't the bills getting paid? What is going on? And then, of course, clutter. Clutter is a big one. This is something that can be gradual, but it can also be sudden. And so clutter is really one of the bigger indicators that there's things going on with care receivers. So that this is kind of the most popular list of recognizing decline, but not a total list. So if this list makes you think and kind of assess and you start recognizing other things, feel free to write them down, and maybe you can make a note, the date, and then see if it continues changing, right? If you see that decline in time. Next slide, please. Now, caregiving and ADLs. Caregivers, as I've been mentioning, they play an important role in the recognition, assessment, and adjusting to help care receivers with ADLs and IADLs. Now, many think that caregivers have to take over their care receivers' ADLs, right? So if mom is having issues bathing, then now I have to bathe her, right? That's sometimes how we see caregivers assisting with ADLs or IADLs. But really, depending on the situation, of course, case by case, is that caregivers can promote independence while ensuring the care receiver's safety. So as I mentioned before in a verbal example I gave you is, okay, well, if mom's not doing her bathing on her own, well, let's figure out why, and if it's something I need to help her with all of the time, or can I support her by making some modifications? Now, let's explore this a little bit more. Let's say that by assisting an older adult in their ADLs, one or several, caregivers help them maintain a sense of independence and autonomy, right? So instead of doing the ADLs for them, right, we are assisting, right? We're there to support, not to take over. And really, when older adults have a sense of safety, of independence, of autonomy, this is also very healthy for them. It's very motivating for them. And we do want to maintain that for as long as possible, as long as it's safe. And really, the sense of independence is good for their, of course, total well-being, but also emotional well-being and overall quality of life. Now, many ADLs, such as mobility and continence management, really directly impact an individual's safety. So by supporting these activities, caregivers can reduce the risk of accidents, falls, and other health complications such as UTIs, right? And so again, being aware that when a loved one starts having issues completing their ADLs, then don't think right away, I have to do it for them. Not necessarily, right? We would need to assess, but thinking, how can I support them to be independent, right? Still with their need for assistance with ADLs. Next slide, please. So to expand a little bit more on this, how can caregivers help their care receivers maintain independence? How can they help them maintain their dignity, their safety, while they still need assistance with their ADLs and IADLs? Well, thankfully, there's adaptive equipment, right, and assistive devices. And these really are crucial tools for independence that help adapting the environment, right? These, as you see here in the slides, this is not a complete list. Again, these are more of the popular ones. If you are new to caregiving, you might not be aware that there are these types of equipment or assistive devices, right? So really, the goal of this slide is to create awareness that these things exist, that these assistive devices exist, and that you can use them to aid your care receiver in maintaining their independence and safety for longer, right? If you are aware that these devices exist, then you might want to keep them present, because a lot of the times, for example, when all of a sudden our caregiving is increasing and it's shifting, sometimes because we're so focused on what we have to do on the day-to-day things that we have to do, then we completely forget about these assistive devices that can maybe not just help the care receiver, but also help us, the caregiver, in making the task easier, avoiding injuries for the caregivers as well. Now, these assistive devices can really transform a potentially dangerous situation into a safer and definitely a more manageable one. So, of course, the efficacy of these assistive devices might change, because the needs with ADL assistant might change as well, right? And so, really, the care team can be a great guide as to if we're using these correctly, or is it time to change, or adapt, right, with this assistive device and beyond. So as you see here, we have grab bars, non-slip mats, adequate lighting, raised toilet seats, shower chairs, walking aids, specially designed kitchen utensils, automatic shut-off appliances, and medication monitoring. And of course, there's different types, there's different brands. So really, it's the goal here is to inform you that these options exist. Next slide, please. Now, when you're a caregiver, caring for a loved one can be very rewarding. However, it can also be very stressful. We have to be realistic about the nature of caregiving. And a lot of the times, caregiving is often a long-term challenge, right? If we're caring for an older loved one, then we know that they're not going to get younger, right? So that means that this caregiving situation, if we choose to continue with it, it will be a long-term challenge. We will need to learn more. We will need to adapt. We will need to spend time and effort and energy, and whether it be physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, right? And all of this can generate stress, and this can be particularly damaging to the caregiver. Now, you might be facing years or even decades of caregiving responsibilities. It can be really daunting, right? And maybe when we start caregiving, we may not even realize that we're caregivers, or we do realize, and we're going with it, and we figure things out and we do it. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be stressful or depleting, especially if we're doing it for a long term, right? Now, it can really be a challenge or particularly disheartening when there's no hope that your family member will get better, right? Or if, despite your best efforts, their condition is gradually deteriorating. If you don't get, as a caregiver, if you don't get the physical and emotional support you need, the stress of caregiving can leave you vulnerable to a wide range of problems, including depression, anxiety, caregiver burnout. We talk about that all the time because it's very real. And really, when caregivers get to this point, both the caregiver and their care receiver can suffer, right? If the caregiver is not doing well, most likely the care receiver is going to feel some of those effects as well. That's why managing the stress levels in your life is really important. It's really just as important as making sure your family member gets to their doctor's appointments. We always try to say the way you prioritize your loved one's doctor's appointments, where you take time off work, you make time for it, you write the questions, you get the answers, you spend all that time and energy. Managing your stress level as a caregiver is as important. You have to make time for it. You have to figure out, how do you manage your stress? What helps you manage your stress, right? It's that important. So here are just some red flags that as a caregiver, maybe they're telling you that you should ask for help, right? That maybe saying, hey, I'm not doing so well, this caregiving situation is tough on me right now, then then why not? Hopefully this slide can be encouraging to you caregivers to figure out when you might ask for help. So that feeling of constant stress, as humans, we aren't necessarily designed to handle constant stress. Our body is more designed to have bouts of stress and then calm down. But that constant stress is not just gonna go away, really. We need to figure out why we're having this constant stress, how we can manage it, because then we'll see negative, not just wellness effects, but really health effects as well. So overall, constant stress is a red flag. Isolation is a big one. Isolation can come about gradually because caregiving encroaches so much of our lives. And so some caregivers really isolate themselves because they don't have time. Their caregiving really takes up all of their free time if they have any. And they start figuring out, well, my friends or other family members, they don't really understand my caregiving situation. So I'd rather just not, socialize, or I don't even have time. So I'm not going to spend time on that. So isolation is a big one because we do need that human connection. We're humans. We need it. Caregiver worsening health issues or mobility issues. And this is when, for example, caregiving can be so intense and the caregiver is just giving 110% to caregiving and nothing for themselves, right? So they're missing doctor's appointments, or maybe their care receiver's mobility is lower, and so the caregiver is overcompensating with no assistive devices, and then maybe they'll start having mobility issues and injuries. So that's also a red flag. And care receiver safety incidents, right? When we as caregivers are so depleted that our care receiver's safety is now suffering, right? And so I think that as caregivers, none of us want to be in this situation. None of us want to put our care receivers at risk. And so how can we do that? By taking care of ourselves as caregivers. Next slide, please. Now, there are all types of supportive services for caregivers. A good place to start is always with those that you feel comfortable with, whether it be family, friends, neighbors, loved ones in general, right? However, if for a lot of caregivers, that's not a reality, right? A lot of caregivers don't have that extra support, and that's okay. Instead of isolating themselves and saying, well, I don't have family and friends that can support me, there are other ways where as a caregiver, you can have that support from a community. Maybe it's from strangers that become friends in a support group. There are many support groups that can be virtual or in person in San Diego County. Southern Caregiver Resource Center offers support groups, and there's a variety of support groups from different organizations as well. We have them available in English and Spanish, in person or virtual. So there is that option of connecting with people who start off as strangers, but really have they understand what you're going through. There's also individual counseling. Maybe if you're not ready to be open in a support group, that's okay. You can seek individual counseling if that's an option where you have your own insurance, or with Southern Caregiver Resource Center, we offer that free service as well. Something else that you might do, let's say you have a good support system for yourself. Well, maybe what else is missing? What else is missing to nourish your well-being? Well, maybe engaging in enjoyable activities, even if it's just once a week. That one thing you love and maybe stop doing because of caregiving, and you really, when you do it, you feel good, right? And maybe that whole week you're re-energized, you're refreshed. And so even if it's just once a week, trying to have that one activity that really makes you look forward to doing it again. And a big one, maybe the biggest one yet, is rest and nourishment. Making sure that as the caregiver, you are resting enough, that you are sleeping, that you are eating. A lot of caregivers neglect their nutrition for their caregiving responsibilities. So I know it's pretty basic sleep and eat, but it truly is very important. And ultimately, if you figuring out I have really high stress levels all the time, then that rest and nourishment is going to be key to helping your body reset from that constant stress that you have going on. Next slide, please. Now, this slide here is kind of an addition to the information that we discussed today. We do have other things that might help you inform or add to this presentation on ADLs and IADLs. So if you're not familiar, we do have a podcast called Let's Talk Caregiving. And we have episode 36 that talks about how to downsize and declutter. We also have episode 55 that talks about fall prevention tips for caregivers. So again, additional resources to what we discussed today. We also have other videos similar to the one that we are doing right now. One is called Caring for the Caregiver Workshop, Mobility and Assistance and Safety Tools. So if you feel like you want to learn more about those assistive devices, this is the video to watch. We also have another video that's called Home Safety. It's SCRC's live stream with Martha, Home Safety. And another video called Steps to a Safer Home, Fall Prevention Strategies for Caregivers. So again, if you are thinking that, yes, I do see my care receiver needing a little bit more help, but I do want to help them maintain independence, these are additional resources that, that can be a support to you. Next slide, please. And here, really, I really want to highlight the importance of caregivers taking care of themselves, because you can't help others until you've helped yourself first. And that's kind of what they tell us when we're on a plane, right? When we're about to take off, they are telling us, you know, in case of emergency, the oxygen mask is going to drop. If you're traveling with someone who needs assistance, you should put on your oxygen mask first, because if you don't, you might pass out, and then that person who needs your assistance will also pass out, right? But if you have your oxygen masks on first, then you are able to help them. So as a caregiver, many times we have to do the same. We have to take care of ourselves to be able to continue fully committing to that caregiving journey and responsibility that we have. So hopefully this image really conveys the need for you to take care of yourself as a caregiver. Next slide, please. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of our services, Southern Caregiver Resource Center is a nonprofit that serves San Diego and Imperial counties. And these are the free supportive services that we offer to family caregivers. We have family consultants, support groups, individual counseling, legal and financial consultation, specialty programs, a lot of education and training, respite, and of course, a lot of online resources, and our evidence-based programs, TLC and Calma, which I'll expand to. Next slide, please. These are our evidence-based programs that we offer, and again, these are free. Caregiver TLC is for our English speakers. Calma is for our Spanish-speaking community. These are a series of classes that are specifically designed for family caregivers who are caring for someone with memory loss, Alzheimer's, or another form of dementia. And these are here to provide caregivers with strategies to cope with stress, learn skills to better manage challenging behaviors that the care receiver might be showing, and really techniques to help you come back from a crisis, avoid isolation, manage frustration, avoid depression. Um, so if you are interested in enrolling in any of these two programs, you can always give us a call and we can set you up and give you the details regarding these classes. Next slide, please. This is where you can find our online information. We have our iCare portal. It's its own tab on our website, which is www.caregivercenter.org. You can find quick tip videos called Caregiver Corner. You can find our podcasts called Let's Talk Caregiving to see all the different topics that we have and all the different guests that we've had. We have other videos similar to this one on all different types of topics, and you can enroll in our digital newsletter called Wavelengths to stay updated into what SCRC is doing. Next slide. And if you're active on social media, you are in luck because so are we. So you can scan this QR code, or if you go onto our website, you can follow us on our social networks: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. Next slide, please. And if you want to connect with us online, you can send us a message via www.caregivercenter.org, or if you want to access our services, we have an online referral form that you can use to self-refer. Or if you want to talk to someone, you can call us toll-free at 800-827-1008 or 858-268-4432. So I want to thank you again so much for joining me in another live stream event, and I'll see you in the next one.